So how does all this fit together? Well, not that well at the moment. If you consider what businesses do, they often have a primary antivirus product or endpoint protection product from a single vendor, and then other endpoint protection type technology from another vendor, or multiple endpoint protection technologies from other vendors. So they have a spattering of all of these technologies throughout their company. And most of them are still within the realms of the traditional antivirus stroke EPP solution. But next generation antivirus products are coming, and they are definitely making big inroads into businesses at the moment. Home users, on the other hand, they tend to just have a single antivirus product, and then they may have the odd spattering of another one of these things, like they may have file or disk encryption. But really, the average user doesn't have very much. They just have antivirus. It's only the users that are more technical that tend to have more of these controls. In order to help you understand what all these different EPP products and technologies do and how they fit together and potentially complement each other, what we want to do is break them up into how they mitigate threats. As you can see here, do they prevent? Do they detect? Do they respond? Do they recover? And then for each technology, we can think about, are they dealing with known threats or unknown threats? Do they work from a known bad list or a known good list? The more layers covering the different areas, the more of a defense in-depth approach that you will have covering more bases. But you also need to consider how having all of this technology together can introduce more complexity and more difficulty when it comes to management. A large number of separate products from different vendors can cause incompatibility, management nightmares, and definitely increases complexity. And this is why we need integration, we need consolidation, and it is coming, so that these control technologies are implemented by a single vendor or potentially a single product. For optimal security, you want these layers of defenses in your product or products. You might select one primary product at the moment that covers some of these controls, and select additional smaller products that cover other controls that mitigate other threats that you're concerned about. And as I said, for ease, it's desirable to have all this functionality in one product, but that's just a dream at the moment. But consolidation is happening fast. Companies are slowly bringing together different technologies into their products through innovation, buyouts, mergers, acquisitions. To determine what products you need to think about what threats you are trying to mitigate, and then think about what happens if you mitigate that threat. Consider what happens when one layer of protection fails, or if one layer of protection actually succeeds, because this is where we get into the defense in-depth approach. What will the threat do next? This can determine what the other controls need to be. Do you have a layer of defense for their next path of attack until the point where you can remove or mitigate that threat completely? What you can't prevent, you detect. What you don't detect, you want to respond and recover from. If you look through this list of various protection technologies, you'll see that we've covered some of these technologies already, such as file and disk encryption, sandboxes early in the course, host-based firewalls early in the course, and others we'll be covering soon. We have prevention of known threats. Often that is based around a list of known bad signatures or known bad artifacts. That's how it does the protection. And then next to it, we have protection from unknown threats, which uses technologies we have explored like sandboxes, isolation and compartmentalization, host-based firewalls, file and disk encryption. And then where prevention fails or we don't have prevention, then we have detection of known threats, often based again around a list of known bad signatures or known bad artifacts. This is what traditional antivirus and vulnerability scanners do. When they identify an issue, often you manually mitigate the issue or you manually respond and recover, or sometimes the product itself attempts to remove the issue. Then we have the detection of unknown threats using things like behavioral analysis, anomaly detection, machine learning, controls we're going to discuss more shortly, and heuristic detection. And then after detection, we want to mitigate by responding and recovering. And you get recovery with tools such as SentinelOne, Deep Freeze, and others. Let me give you an example of how that might work. So, for example, one method is to redirect each system change to a virtual environment so there is no change to the real environment. So your environment can be rolled back to a state before the attack, cleaning the system and removing all data. That would be more of an automated way of response and recovery. And there are non-technical ways to respond and recover, or rather more procedural ways where you just restore something from backup or from a snapshot. That can be automated, it can be non-automated, it can be more procedural. Now, preventing and detecting unknown threats plus response and recovery for those threats that sneak through is where the next generation solutions are focused at the moment. And if we look at that list there, individually, these control techniques are not sufficient to protect against the wide range of attack types that exist. If a single layer of defense is used with a single technology, an attack will eventually bypass it. The more broad and layered your defense strategy, as you can see here, with multiple different layers and types, I'm not suggesting you use all of them, but the more broad and layered it is, the more effective it will be in protecting against a broad spectrum of attacks. So there you go. That is how endpoint protection technologies work together. They work together because they provide slightly different approaches to their protection method, from prevention of known and unknown, from detection of known and unknown, and recovery and response. We want that broad and layered approach to the defense strategy so that it is effective against a broad spectrum of attacks.